So two of the people in the waiting room are Rachel and Jennifer. Should I let them in first?
Yeah.
Hi, Rachel.
Hey. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
Who else do we have in here? I thought I saw another body.
Missouri.
Sonora, there's a...
Yeah, okay. I was trying to get rid of it.
There's a surprise.
Should I let more people in now? Are we good to go?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Hello, people who are joining.
If you guys would like and don't feel obligated, feel free to turn on your cameras and your mics. This is a social event, so we'd love to see your faces and hear from you. If you are a little camera shy, feel free to write in the chat kind of where you're from, and if you already have a career in conservation, let us know what that is, or if you are interested in pursuing a career in conservation, write that down as well. Or you can unmute yourself and just let us know. So we'll just wait a couple of minutes to see if anyone else is going to come in, and let's see. Great. Mary wrote. She is signing in from Somaliland this morning. Oh, wow. Taking care of some cheetahs over there, Mary. So Somaliland is in Africa. So it is bright and early where she is now. Desiree's from Oregon. I don't have a career in conservation yet, but here is hoping. Great. Perfect. Jane, what about you? Where are you from? Lin Fang, welcome. I like your bangs. Those new?
It's
No?
been there.
Nope. It's been there. Okay. Great. Well, I'm Jessica. I am the U.S. Outreach Coordinator for Action for Cheetahs in Kenya. So part of my job is to kind of help Mary Wykestra, the Director of Action for Cheetahs in Kenya, plan some of her events that happen in the US, as well as help coordinate fundraisers like this one to promote funds for the conservation and research work that Action for Cheetahs in Kenya does. I am based out of San Diego, California, and I am currently a wildlife care specialist, also known as a zookeeper, down here at the San Diego Zoo. So I've been in the field of animal care, conservation, and education for about 15 years. And then we have a couple of my coworkers, so to speak, even though I don't work directly next to them. If you
Good
guys want to
try.
introduce yourself, my colleagues.
I'm also Jess, and I assist Jessica with what she does. So I'm her assistant, basically. And I am a keeper and educator at a small facility in Southern California with called Wild Wonders, and have been a keeper mainly with cheetah for also about 15 years.
And I am Sonora. Hi. I originally started working with Mary a few years ago on a master's project where I got to go to Kenya and be there with Mary and the group and see how everything worked there. And so that was pretty cool. And I'm still working and helping them with various different projects such as this and other things. So yeah.
Great.
Sonora's
All
a
right.
rock star.
Jane says, hi, I'm from Kenya. Thank you for waking up so early. Currently in Samburu at the field station there. I work at ACK as a research officer. Wonderful. If you'd like to share more of that at any point, feel free. I mean, that sounds very interesting. So like I mentioned, this is a fundraising event. It is obviously free to attend, but throughout the event, we will have kind of intermission, so to speak, where we can chat as a group, and we'll also provide different ways to support Action for Cheetahs in Kenya, either by sharing our messages or by purchasing some of our cool crafts, which we'll talk about in a little bit, as well as other means of donations. So we do have 3 guest speakers tonight, as you can see up on the page. Cosmos, Rachel, and Jennifer will all be speaking this evening on the work that they do. And they're all 3 in pretty different fields. So it's going to be really interesting to hear from each one of them. They'll be talking for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A portion after that. Feel free to either unmute yourself and have a conversation, or you can write any questions down in the chat. But if we want to show some of the slides to start off with. So we have our mission statement to promote the conservation of cheetahs through research, awareness, and community participation in Kenya. We have a few different programs that we do. Research, which field studies and data collection. We have a canine unit, canine scat dog detection, which they can actually detect specifically cheetah scat versus other carnivores, as well as outreach. No conservation is really possible without outreach and education as well. So locally in Kenya, as well as US base, we have different opportunities to educate. So this is a little bit of a breakdown of what your money could go towards. So by a donation of $10, which you have your the Venmo QR code up there, you can just take a photo of it and it'll take you right to our Venmo page. A donation of $10 can supply 1 school visit. So over in Kenya, we can actually send somebody to a school and talk about the work that ACK does and talk about the local cheetah. Can support digital data collection for 1 month and meals for 1 day during field work. So that's quite a lot for $10. $25, 1 conflict mitigation toolbox, 1 student workbook, and 1 spay neuter for a community dog or cat. And then $50, 1 day of national survey field work, 1 week of dog training, and 1 week of camera trapping. So that's a little bit of where your money could go to. You can also support ACK just by staying connected and seeing what we're up to. So that is the website. And you can view kind of just our history, what we're up to currently, and some of our past projects, as well as kind of meet our staff to see who is involved. Yeah, so make sure you follow us. There's, again, our QR code for our Venmo, and it is at call/action4cheetahs. Right. So it's about 7:11. We'll have just a couple minutes to start. Let's see. We just asked that during the guest speaking portions, we ask that everybody mutes themselves, but then when it does come to the question and answer portion, you can either unmute yourself and ask a question live, or you can just write a question in the comment section of the chat room, and we'll answer that for you at that time. So Jess, you want to go ahead and intro our next speaker?
Sure. Everybody is going to have to pardon me. I have my 8-week-old on my lap. So Rachel is going to go first. And Rachel has worked with and for the U.S. Forest Service seasonally as a biological science technician for 10 years, focusing on a variety of sensitive raptor, herpetological, and mammal species in northern Arizona. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in biology with a specialized certificate in wildlife ecology and management. In addition to field studies, she spent 5 years in the zoo and education field, specializing in the husbandry of big cats and birds of prey. She has since taken that passion for husbandry and conservation and practices falconry in her off season. So lead us away, Rachel. Tell us all the fun things you do.
Yeah, so my name is Rachel Warburton. I live in northern Arizona in the southwestern United States. Right now, I'm a biological science technician, so I work for the U.S. Forest Service on the Prescott National Forest. I've got a background in wildlife education, and I'm currently practicing my 3rd season of falconry, so I'm fairly new to that. But I do have a little visual representation here. Jess, can we go ahead and do a screen share?
I think you should be able to now.
Perfect. Great. So my position with the Forest Service is seasonal. I work only about 6 months a year, from early spring into early fall. And that timeline really coincides with the breeding timeline for a whole list of different threatened and endangered species. We work with a lot of raptors, some songbirds. I do a lot of reptile and amphibian surveys, all species that we try to keep a close eye on for management purposes. Our biggest project is the Mexican spotted owl. That's kind of our priority species for our region. It's a threatened owl that lives up in mixed conifers up at a higher elevation. And we go out and we do nighttime surveys for this bird, which is a lot of fun. So I get to go out after dark, predetermined GPS routes, and I hoot out into the darkness. And hopefully we get a response back. And if we do, then we use that information to locate where they're occupying territories on the landscape, if they're nesting, if they are, where are they nesting, and how many young are they fledging every year. So that information is really important for informing decisions that are going to be made for other projects too. So we do prescription burns, we do forest thinning out here, timber sales, we do trail maintenance. There's a lot of recreation on public land. And so what we find kind of dictates how those different projects are managed throughout the year. I also do VES, or visual encounter surveys, which are a lot of fun. And that is basically, I just go out mostly into riparian zones and we just kind of trudge along and see what we can find. And mostly we're looking for sensitive, threatened, or endangered frogs, toads. We've got the northern leopard frog, the Arizona toad. And then we've also got a few like garter snakes that are threatened. This is the narrow-headed garter snake, a special species that we find endemic to the Southwest. And so that's kind of what we usually focus most of our time on, kind of cruising through these riparian zones and whatnot. And all of that information also goes back to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that information is then used to determine kind of where those species statuses lay. So I think, for example, right now, the Mexican spotted owl may be up for delisting, or at least that decision is being talked about right now. And so the information that we're gathering every year about where these animals are on the landscape will help to kind of sway where that goes for them. So I got started by volunteering. When I was in college, I reached out to a biologist that was local here in the Forest Service. I didn't really know anything about where I wanted my career to go. I didn't have any experience. All I knew was that I liked being outside. And so she scooped me up and took me under her wing and showed me bird surveys, bat surveys, fish surveys, frog surveys. And I learned a lot about what I do and do not like as far as field work goes. And I think it's really important to kind of make that decision while you're going out and trying to figure out where you want to lay in this field, because there are so many options out there. And I still volunteer. I actively go out and volunteer with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. It's a state department, and we do programs where we allow the public to come out and observe us while we do these bat mist netting nights. And that's a lot of fun, something that I discovered that I have a big passion for. I've also been able to volunteer on some ungulate projects where they're collaring elk and pronghorn, going out and keeping tabs on the migration corridors and kind of watching where these animals are moving across the landscape. Didn't really love that one so much. So that was also good information to have. And then I also spent a lot of time volunteering for a wildlife education program in Flagstaff, focusing specifically on raptors. And before doing this, I had no clue that I enjoyed raptors as much as I do. And so that volunteer experience was really, really good for me. So my Forest Service job is only seasonal. And so that means I've got another 6 months of the year to fill. And I chose to kind of focus that on zoos. And it took me into wildlife education. And I found that I really loved that, connecting wildlife with people and really inspiring that spark in kids and adults alike. And I learned a lot about training and animal behavior, and just really enjoyed it. But over time, I kind of discovered it wasn't really my passion. It wasn't sustainable for me personally. And so I did kind of loop back and decided to focus all of my efforts on fieldwork. So I do that and am now at a point in my life where I can also pursue falconry at the same time, which is pretty awesome. And surprisingly enough, there's actually a lot of biologists in the falconry world. And this bird belongs to a friend of mine who participates in a golden eagle rehab program where she's able to bring in these rehabbed birds, use falconry techniques to teach these animals how to hunt, how to use the landscape and the weather to their advantage and get them as fit as they could possibly be before then releasing them. And I recently released my own bird a couple of weeks ago. So that was pretty fun. And I don't know, that's just kind of where I am today, kind of all over the place. But it's nice to be able to tie in both my professional passion and then this personal passion of mine where I can train animals and connect people with them, because with falconry, you know, you get that up close and personal connection with the animal and get to observe them in a unique way. But yeah, that's me. Does anybody have any questions there?
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Can you explain the process of getting your bird, training it for falconry, and then releasing it?
Yeah. So
Like, what is the point of, like, do they do okay once you release them? And does everybody do that?
a lot of people do.
Okay.
So in the United States, you're legally allowed to trap a young wild bird. And for those of you who may not know, raptors have a relatively high mortality rate, especially for that first year of life. About 80% of raptors in their first year don't make it. And then another like 70 to 80% of those birds who did make it will pass within the first 5 years. So life is hard out there for them. They've got a lot going against them. And so we're able to trap these young birds in their first year of life. We can use them for falconry, which is a hunting sport, and we train them to hunt. We teach them how to ride the wind and how to use different slopes and how to crash through cover. And once that animal is then successful and has shown that it can be proficient in doing that, you can release that bird back into the wild. You don't have to. I kind of like the whole full circle thing of it. And so I did release my bird back into the wild because I could see that she, you know, had acquired all the skills that she would need to survive.
Gotcha. So it kind of helps them in the long run.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're getting that bird through that first hurdle of life, honestly.
That's really cool. I know nothing about falconry, so that's really awesome.
I know some people, didn't falconry start as a mean of like pest control, like way back in the day?
I have not heard that. So that's not something that I'm familiar with as far as the history of falconry goes. As far as I know, it's always been a hunting sport as a mean of sustenance.
As far as the falcon hunting, or what do you mean?
Yeah, so you'll use the bird to acquire small game for yourself, essentially. And so the game that we target like cottontail rabbits, jackrabbits, squirrels. We can do some quail hunting here as well. And so all of that food goes back to feed the raptors, but then the excess of those catches I can process and we eat it ourselves.
Got it. I might have just heard maybe one reason why some people have falconry birds for their land is for pest control, but maybe that's not where it started. Maybe that's just one of the benefits.
You can use them, yeah. So you can use them for what's called abatement, and that's a really popular, or it's becoming more popular now for like vineyards, and where you just fly your hawk or your falcon around, and it just deters those pest birds from.
Got it.
Yeah, there you go.
Will they hire like people to be bird abatement specialists that like at airports and stuff?
Yep. Yeah, they do.
Super cool.
It is. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions for Rachel?
Yeah, I was wondering, so how did you get into falconry? Is that something you did after you got your degree, or?
So that's something that I learned about volunteering for the Raptor education program. Right out of college, I fell into this program, loved it. The woman who runs it still, she's a master falconer. And so that's kind of where I learned that it's a real thing and not just like a medieval thing of the past. But I was never at a point in my life to fully pursue it because it does take a lot to pursue falconry, a lot of commitment and time and effort. So it took me about 6 years before I could truly kind of dive into it. But I learned about it through the Raptor education programs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? No?
Any more questions
Okay.
for Rachel? Thank you so much, Rachel. That was awesome.
You're welcome. It's a lot to condense.
You did a great job.
Well, you have an extra 10 minutes if you want to talk more.
Oh.
Look
Yeah.
at that. Look, you went so fast. I
Yeah,
messaged her ahead of time and was like, you have this many minutes.
I know. I'm like, oh gosh, there's
I
so
know,
much to talk about.
It's hard. Our field is so passionate that sometimes we can just talk forever about it. So
Mhm. Yep. That is
thank you for whoever donated already.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody feel free to turn your cameras on. I think most people have their cameras on, but if everybody just wants to talk about whatever you want to talk about for a second.
Lin Feng wants to know what your most interesting encounter was with raptors.
Oh man, the owl work honestly is my favorite. We get pretty up close and personal with those wild birds because we need to know exactly where the nests are, and we need to know exactly how many babies are fledging so that all of that can be reported back. But I don't know, you get to see these young birds kind of learning how to hop around and branch out from their nests, and it's a unique perspective. They're pretty cryptic as it is. They're hard to find, and so getting to see that as often as I do is probably one of my favorite surveys for that reason.
Oh, I hear a baby.
Yeah, sorry.
I have a question for you, Rachel.
Sure.
You mentioned going out and hooting in order to figure out if they would respond.
Yeah.
Is there a practice in which you're making sure that the hoot call you're making is one that is not making them think it's like another bird that's threatening their territory? Or how do
So
you?
it's
How do
exactly
you?
what we want to do.
You do
Briefly.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not going to like continue to hoot once we get a response, but it's the quickest and least invasive way for us to figure out whether an area is occupied or not, because they are so territorial during that breeding season. So I'll go out, I'll throw out a 4-note hoot, and then as soon as I hear a response back, I just log that information and then we're out.
Got it.
So we're kind of playing on that territorial response. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you do the hoot for us, please?
Yeah, they make all kinds of wacky noises, but the most common one that you'll hear in the field is a 4-note, just a ooh, 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 ooh. So not too far off from a barred owl. It's like 1 note different from a barred owl.
That's very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. I practiced.
Do you have to work on your pitch?
You know, they actually seem to respond to just about anything, which can be hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming you get like that there are more than one species of owl in the area, and you just, if you get a bunch of calls in return, you have to pay close attention to make sure you're hearing that hoot back,
Yeah.
right? Like,
So every
I guess I'm
species
saying
of
you probably spend a
owl,
lot of time learning the different owl hoots.
yep, every species of owl will hoot differently. And so like the Western screech owl has like a ping pong ball hoot where it's like whoo, 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 whoo. So everything's very distinct, and we do keep tabs of all of that information. We don't have barred owls in Arizona yet, so otherwise that would be something that we would keep an eye on because they're a predatory species. Great horned owls are prevalent out here, so if I hear a great horned owl hooting, then I log that information and we leave and either return another night to complete the call point to protocol, or we just kind of like wait it out and give it some time for the great horned owl to move on so that we're not unintentionally creating a situation where a spotted owl would be predated on by a great horned.
Interesting.
So there's all kinds of protocols and rules to follow. Yeah.
Super cool. Mary asks, what's the biggest message you would want to give to people wanting to work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or Forestry Service you work for?
Be willing to move. So
Um,
They're gonna send you places, don't they?
yeah, be willing to move, like be open to job opportunities in weird places, and also like don't really fixate on what species you want to work with. Honestly, like I've done snail surveys, and snail surveys don't really sound like a lot of fun, but we had an absolute blast. So
it does sound like fun.
Yeah, don't underestimate what species you may end up actually enjoying working with. So be willing to take just about anything and everything. The Forest Service will sometimes, depending on the forest and depending on the biologist, will allow volunteers to come out with them. So you can kind of like get an idea, kind of like how I did, whether you're actually into the field work, because it's not for everybody. And yeah, that'll also help to create connections for you and kind of build your reputation up before you're even able to obtain one, not having had worked in the field before. So any other questions?
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I could honestly ask you questions all day, but
I'd answer all of them.
I'll just text you. So we also have a shop. You can go online and it's called Cool Crafts. So we've got calendars, like lots of little jewelry sets. There's virtual dog adoptions. The cheetah soccer balls are really cute. We have like a lot of zoos who have bought them for their actual cheetah, and the actual cheetah love them. There's these little standing animals. There's like baskets. There's all sorts of really cool stuff. So if anybody's interested in any of those things to help support ACK, you can scan the QR code there in the top left and go to the shop. And it's on Shopify. And Sonora, do you have anything else to say about all our fun things? Sonora takes care of the cool crafts, but a lot of them are made locally in Kenya.
Yeah, that's all I was gonna add, is just that, yeah, a lot of the crafts like the standing animals and the beaded jewelry and bowls and things, they come from local artists in Kenya. So the project is kind of to try and help artists in Kenya make a livelihood while also supporting conservation wildlife. So yeah, if you want to help support us and also artists in Kenya, then you can head on over there.
They've got these really cool beaded dog collars too, if anybody has a dog that needs a cool collar.
A cool craft collar?
A cool craft cool collar. A cool craft collar.
I also, I don't know if you guys can see me because I'm speaking or not, but I have a bunch of the bracelets. I almost own everything that is on the site. So I've been with ACK for 4 years, so I've accumulated a lot of things, but definitely recommend it. There are really cool jewelry pieces that are made out of refurbished, recyclable, like wires and pots and pans and things. So it's really cool.
And these shirts that both Jessica and I are wearing.
Yep.
Have different colors. They say Action for Cheetahs on the back.
Do you have any more slides to go through before we go to our next speaker?
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Jessica, carry it away.
All right, Jen, we're gonna go a few minutes early for you. Is that okay?
Yep. I'm ready to go.
Awesome. So our next speaker is Jennifer Lee Warner. And we have her whole bio up here, which I won't read through every bit of it, but I encourage you guys to screenshot it and read it because she is pretty impressive. So Jennifer and I met Wow, did we meet at San Diego Bird Festival or some conservation event down in San Diego when she used to live here? But she is an award-winning wildlife photographer. She does landscape work, but she really dedicates her life to photographing wildlife and really inspiring people to want to create a passion for conservation. So her passion for wildlife photography began at a very, very young age, and she got a degree in communications with and photography from the Edward R. Murrow School of Communications in Washington State. That's a big mouthful. I don't know what you call it by nickname, but she does this full time now. And in 2018, she became the chair of ethics committee for the North American Nature Photography Association, which is an amazing association. She works closely with conservation organizations to help support their mission to protect wildlife and the world around us. She is a Nikon professional, and her fine arts image have been displayed in art galleries, festivals, and museums. So definitely check out her work. Again, screenshot this, read it all. She has her website at the bottom, experiencewildlife.com. And Jennifer, thank you so much for being here. And if we can give her access to share her screen, I believe she has some amazing stuff to show us.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna tell you just real quick, I've been having a little problem with getting it to share the actual presentation. So bear with me for a second. I think I figured out the hack. Okay, so can you see the actual presentation?
We see just the photo from the presentation. Yeah, it looks good.
It's moving. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. That was my biggest fear. Okay, so great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I actually, I did meet Jessica through so many different organizations that we seem to cross, but I think the first time I met you was when Mary was speaking at the San Diego Zoo for
wow.
So if I remember right, I think that is actually where we met.
Okay, good memory.
Yeah, but we have crossed paths many, many, many times.
Yes.
So like she said, I am the CEO of Experience Wildlife, Nikon professional, certified Texas master naturalist, and the ethics committee chair for NAMPA, also a mentor for Girls Who Click. I do workshop leading, speaking, photojournalism, and then my images have been on display all over the world, and in many, many publications. So, but where I really started as a photographer I was a wildlife photographer and switched over to conservation photography. And a lot of people are not exactly familiar with what the difference is. And predominantly the difference between a conservation photographer versus a wildlife photographer is what you do with the images after you take them. So whether photographing people or animals or habitat, and that really is the distinguishing difference. So my first, and it was a book on the Washington State Park Arboretum, which is the largest wetlands in the Seattle area. The book was started because they were going to run a freeway through this wetlands, and they wanted local photographers to come through and document as much as they could before that happened. So I spent a year in that park documenting as much as I could, and I did end up with 3 images that ended up in the final book. These mallard ducks, this Anna's hummingbird, and this Japanese maple leaf. And what this process really taught me was how powerful photography could be as a tool to really influence and change minds on conservation topics. And that's when really my work changed from just taking pretty pictures to documenting situations and using them to help inspire people to make changes. Conservation storytelling is a really powerful way of being able to tell stories about what researchers are doing. So this current project I'm working on is on the Western burrowing owl. So it is focusing on the Western burrowing owl in the San Diego County. And just to give you a little bit of a background, although the Western burrowing owl is not an endangered species, on a local level, it's nearly regionally extinct. Back about 12 years ago, there was only one breeding population left in San Diego County. And a lot of that was caused by habitat loss and the attempted eradication of this species right here, this California ground squirrel. And the California ground squirrel is so instrumental to the Western burrowing owl in California because they are the ones who make the burrows that the owls live in. They don't build their own burrows, and they need the ground squirrel in order to have viable habitat to live in. So the researchers at the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance partnered with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and started the burrowing owl recovery program. So the owls at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park breed. They have 3 breeding pairs there on site, and they actually breed the owls that will then go into the habitat that's set aside by CDFW. And you can see here a variety of people working. We've got people from the San Diego Zoo, Living Coast also is helping here, and a few individuals from CDFW. And they're building these artificial burrows so that the owls have somewhere to live in. And although they prefer the actual ground squirrel colonies, there's just not enough of them to make viable habitat. So right here, they're building these temporary aviaries so that the owls can be relocated and get acclimated to the area they're living in. And then once the aviaries and the burrows are built, they move the owls that are breeded at the San Diego Zoo. They give them medical workups right there in the field, making sure that they're healthy and going to have the best chance of survival, giving them new leg bands so they can identify the individuals, and then transferring them into the artificial burrows and the temporary aviaries. And after they're acclimated to these new aviaries, they will eventually take those down, allowing them to become free roaming. And then ideally, they'll either attract mates into their new colonies or move on to different areas, expanding the population. And so these are a couple wild burrowing owls in San Diego County that are living in actual ground squirrel burrows. You can't talk about one population without talking about the species as a whole. So they're not the only ones that are endangered. The Florida burrowing owl is also an endangered and threatened species. They're very different in the sense that they do build their own burrows, and they are actually living on area that is set aside for them. Sometimes is in people's front yard. So communities have come together to set aside habitat for them. So another project that I'm working on involves marine mammals. I do a lot of work involving human wildlife coexistence. And in La Jolla, the marine mammals there, the California sea lions and the harbor seals, have one of the only mainland rookeries that people know of. This is a problem as far as the close proximity to the urban environment can lead to wildlife harassment. This newborn California sea lion pup is being handled by these children who maybe don't know any better. So utilizing photographs to convince lawmakers that this is in fact a problem. When the sea lions are handled like that, they're often abandoned by their mothers, and wildlife rehabilitators have to come in and rescue them. This is SeaWorld Rescue. They've come and they take the sea lion pups that are not able to survive on their own and rehabilitate them. And this is the Marine Mammal Center in Laguna Beach. They often take the sea lions that come up a little more north, and they release them back into the wild once they've been rehabilitated. Advocacy is also really important. and working with groups that are working towards creating stronger regulations helps ensure that we're setting aside habitat for those species. So in the end in La Jolla, at least on the harbor seal side, they do have a beach closure now that is for 5 months a year. They're still working on the sea lion side, and that is something that we're still strongly trying to encourage lawmakers to set aside habitat. As a photographer, I also work with nonprofits to create media assets. One of my strongest partners is the Cheetah Conservation Fund out of Namibia. And many of you might know Dr. Lori Marker. I've done a lot of work both in the United States and in Namibia with them to be able to create outreach and educational materials. So not just the cheetahs that they have on site that they've rescued, but also the scat dog detection, the wildlife rehabilitation of other animals that live in the area, and of course, the livestock guarding dog program that they have. Images like this have been used in newsletters and blogs, as well as posters for International Cheetah Day. And this is a poster with an image that I took that ended up at the conservation conference in Dubai in 2020. I also use my images for educational purposes, things like books, blog posts, articles and stories explaining why you might not want to feed wildlife, including this fox that had been fed by wildlife photographers and then had to be put down because he was becoming aggressive. I also use my images for presentations, online workshops, bringing people out and educating them in person, as well as large groups. And of course, to inspire people to want to protect wildlife and the habitats that they live in. Images like this can inspire people to want to protect the habitats, to understand not just above the land, but in the water as well. And of course, just get people to fall in love with wildlife, because people will protect what they love. So I really think photography is a powerful tool that can be used for conservation, to advocate, to educate, to document, and to inspire. So I'm always open to discuss more and would love to take any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was a wonderful presentation. I was hoping to see more images because you have like the best photographs, but I guess we'll have to go to your website to see those.
Yes.
Yes. Let's see. I had written in the comments that in my new department at the San Diego Zoo, we have 2 new burrowing owls that we are planning on breeding. And so for those of you that don't know, I'm in a department that's able to educate the public. And so being able to have those species that, like Jen mentioned, are really susceptible out in the wild, and we need to really talk about their conservation efforts. It's a really good way of doing that. So I'm really excited. And so hopefully that'll tie in along with, you know, your photographs and your work and what the partnerships with the Living Coast and everything is doing.
Yeah.
Let's see, Mary said many people love photography, but would like to know how to make a living from it. How do they break into work that pays the bills? Great question, Mary.
Very good question. That is a very tough one, especially when it comes to conservation, because there is this expectation that comes along with a lot of people, especially in the nonprofit world, that photography should be just given away. And as much as most of us would love to do that, the equipment that we use is very expensive. The time that takes to actually document these issues is so time consuming. We can't have another job while we give away all of our work for free. So the first thing that I recommend when it comes to really making a living is, you know, you have a day rate and you do a good job of advocating for yourself. You know, we are so passionate about the wildlife and habitats that we're photographing, we sometimes forget to advocate for ourselves as well. And explaining to our partners why we have to be paid, why, we have to put gas in our car to get to where we're going, why we have to be able to insure our equipment, why we need lights on in our house in order to edit the photos that we take for you. It seems like a silly thing, but yeah, so advocating for yourself, that's definitely a good step. But as you saw with the presentation, I don't just have one avenue of income. I do a lot of art festivals, I do speaking engagements, I do articles, I write, as well as photograph for magazines, and I lead workshops, and all of those things hopefully get me enough money to keep doing my job. And then sometimes, if I'm really lucky enough to, maybe let me go out to eat once in a while. So it's certainly not a job that you make a lot of money at, but it's something that is incredibly rewarding. But yeah, so definitely advocate for yourself, make sure you are getting paid for what you do. And, it's okay to give away work sometimes for, for certain causes that you're very passionate about, but you certainly can't do it all the time.
Can you tell us more about these workshops that you lead for those of us that love wildlife photography?
Absolutely. So I do a variety of different types of workshops. Some are on a very large scale, some are a little more pared down. So for example, my next big workshop I will be leading will be in Grand Teton National Park. It's an area I've been going back to for about 16 years, a couple times a year. And that will be in May, the 21st through 25th. And all that information is on my website, but I have 6 more spots available. We're really targeting things like grizzly bears, moose, bison, those type of species. And during that time of year, you're seeing the babies, and that's always really fun. Grand Teton is also a really good place to do landscape photography, and we'll always add that in as well. And then I am leading a tour to Namibia in June. That's one of my bigger international tours. That one is sold out, but I do have a wait list if you are dying to come. And we will spend some time at the Cheetah Conservation Fund, because I really do think it's important to incorporate conservation into any of the tours that I do, and make sure that people aren't just going out and taking pictures, but they're learning about the conservation efforts being done for the species that we're looking at. I also do have day trips. So I have one in Southern California in La Jolla it'll be for July 2nd. And that is just a morning workshop. And we're really looking at the new California sea lions that will have just been born. And we talk about the importance of photographing them from a distance without disrupting them, and really showing people that they can still photograph without being disruptive to the wildlife there. And then I also am going to Alaska in July. That's another big trip. That'll be really fun, with a target of both grizzly bears, black bears, and sea otters and whales. And then I have a conservation photography workshop in Florida in December. That one will be really fun. We're going to visit 3 different conservation organizations, in addition to photographing the shorebirds and manatees, and talking about some of the on-the-ground efforts and how to document conservation photography. So, yeah.
That all excites me. Everything you just said excites me.
Yes.
And how much of the trip do you actually teach maybe beginners about the act of, like, what's inside the camera? What is an f-stop? What are these controls? Or do you just kind of guide the trip and let everyone kind of, have at it themselves?
Yeah, so they are, the bigger trips are more based on photo tours as opposed to workshops. So with a stronger focus on getting you in the right place. But I do make an effort to meet virtually a few times before the trip make sure everybody is completely set to go. And then I try to limit the amount of people that I bring, usually no more than about 6 people total, so that I can give individualized attention. So if it's something that you are needing, camera settings, things like that, we can definitely, spend extra time. And then I always do try to incorporate time in the evening to go over pictures and look at what we took and how to make them better.
Great.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you.
you're welcome.
I have a
Anybody? Okay. Go ahead.
a two-part question. So for someone who's just getting started in conservation photography, what would your advice be for their very first step? And the second part of that, how do you get people to take you seriously when you're just getting started?
Mhm.
Sure. My advice, a couple things. First of all, I think getting involved with organizations that have similar interests is a really good stepping stone, whether that be a local camera club, an organization like NAMPA, which is North American Nature Photographers Association. There's lots of different groups that get together, and being able to talk through those with other people who are in the same boat as you, I think makes a world of difference. Joining a photography workshop or an online class starts to get you to network with other people, and you get to really understand what, other people, the challenges, the successes that other people are having, which kind of guides you along that way. Another thing that I really advocate for is the importance of starting on a local level. So, start local, think global, but act local. And you'll find that if you are finding a conservation issue in your backyard, you're more likely to really get to photograph it intimately, and being able to come back day after day, get to know the animal's patterns, what's happening in that area. And you'll find that your images will be much richer than if you say go to Africa for a week. You're not going to get the same amount of pictures, the same quality of images, especially when you're starting out, when you're able to go into your backyard or somewhere very local and be able to really dive deep into a conservation issue that's happening locally to you. And conservation issues happen everywhere in the world. So there's definitely stuff happening in your backyard, and starting on that real local level is going to get you to get a lot of practice to grow your portfolio and be taken more seriously. And then just have some confidence in yourself, even if you are starting out, being able to sell yourself as the expert in whatever it is, and do your research, make sure that you're understanding that species that you're documenting is going to really help sell you as the expert in whatever that is.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have one more question.
Sure.
What are the best steps to get in your photographs and maybe an article into a magazine or a book?
Good question. Well, breaking into publications can be very, very challenging. There's a lot of people trying to do it. And so it gets to a point where a lot of editors, they only respond to you if they're interested. So it can be very discouraging when you are putting the work out there and not hearing anything back. So I do recommend starting on a smaller level. Look for publications that are maybe in your own hometown or in your own state. Getting into those publications is going to be a lot easier than, I'm going to start with National Geographic. Like, probably not going to happen. Not saying it can't, but you're more likely to get into your local newspaper than you are to get into National Geographic on your first try. And I see so many people who that's their aspiration, so they just aim high and then get very disappointed. So starting small is okay. There's nothing wrong with local publications, and they're far more likely to help local photographers out. And as far as book projects go, there's a lot of publications that are looking for unique perspectives that, maybe that hasn't been thought of. So, if you can look into different book projects that are trying to collaborate with local photographers, like a couple of the ones I had, and just really dive in on a certain topic that they're trying to cover and try to get a unique perspective. It's, if you're trying to take a picture of a brown pelican in coastal California, everybody has a brown pelican in coastal California. It's not a very unique species, but if you can find a unique way of photographing that, or find a species that they're looking for that maybe nobody really thinks to cover, those are going to be more likely to get in than the very charismatic animals that everybody wants to photograph.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Addie says, while photography is really cool and an interesting way of educating the people, the cost of a good camera can put someone off and sometimes demoralizes the early career from starting. What is the first camera you started with?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to age myself. So my first camera was a film camera. And actually all of my schooling was in film. And then my first job was digital. So I had to relearn everything that I learned. Okay, so to super age myself, my first digital camera took floppy disks.
Stop it.
True story. Oh my gosh, I have it right here. I got to show you this. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this camera, but it legit takes floppy disks. And this thing deserves to be in the Smithsonian. It's ridiculous.
Oh.
So
that's
hilarious. My first camera was way before anything that you would ever use today. But my first real camera, I was 21 years old and I had no money. I didn't even have a bed. I slept on the floor in my apartment. And I went to the bank and I begged them to raise my credit card limit so that I could buy a camera, and explain to them how I was going to be able to pay it back because it was going to make me money. And it worked. They did. They gave me enough money to buy my first camera. But you don't have to go that route by any means. If you are starting out, it is not your full-time job, and you want something to use, don't discount the idea of buying used equipment. You can go on a lot of different sites like B&H Photo and Video, or Borrowed Lenses, or even, if you trust the seller, things like Craigslist, things like that, or just friends, photographers who are selling equipment. A lot of, especially professional photographers, they like to upgrade their equipment pretty regularly. So there's nothing really wrong with the equipment they're selling. They're just wanting something new. So getting used equipment is a great way of getting something good to start out with. And if you are doing something for a special project, you don't have to always buy your equipment. You can always rent it. And borrowedlenses.com is a great website that allows you to just rent equipment, so you don't have to buy it. If you say we're going to go to Kenya for 2 weeks and you wanted a nice, camera and lens to bring with you, you can always rent it instead of buying it.
She lives in Kenya. if she comes to visit me in San Diego. Yes, that is a great point. Yeah, especially when you're starting off, you don't need any fancy equipment. You just kind of need to learn composition, and there's other things you can learn with equipment that's not so fancy and work your way up.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We'll put the the slides back up to kind of give you guys another reminder of ways that you can donate. Again, our cool crafts, donating directly to our Venmo, just supporting us by following us on our social media pages. All right. So we got another $10, so total is $13. Thank you so much, Desiree, for your donation, and whoever else donated as well earlier. If you guys have any questions about ACK, the work that we do, feel free to ask us. If you guys want to just chat about anything else on topic or off topic, I guess we can chat. This is, again, it's a social hour. So yeah, feel free to, looks like most people's cameras are on, but if you want to open your mic up, we have our last presenter here in about 5 to 10 minutes. So, and he's super cool, so you don't want to leave now because he's a really cool guy.
I have a question about the scat detection work with the dogs. How widespread is that program, and what information are you trying to get from those samples?
Yeah, Mary or Addie, do you guys want to talk about that, or Cosmos? Do you even want to talk about that? Coming straight from the source. I will tackle that in a bit. Okay, I think that's going to be part of Cosmos's talk.
Jumping ahead, gotcha.
Yes. Yes, for these events, this is our third Careers in Conservation event. And we have had 3 speakers from the field of conservation at each one. And at least one of them is actually a member of the Action for Cheetahs in Kenya team. So our last presenter, which we usually save them for last because they are usually speaking from Kenya and it is bright and early in the morning there. So we give them a little bit of time to enjoy their coffee before they have to present. So yes, he will tell you all the things you want to know. I was very, very fortunate. I got to go actually visit the field site back in November for the first time. And I got to meet the scat detection dogs, and I actually got to see a demonstration which Cosmos and his team led. And it's just amazing that the work that they do through training to train those dogs to detect scat, and it's pretty fascinating. So I can't wait to hear what he has to say. Lin Fang said, question about short storytelling. Any idea why there is not much professional photographers to create TikTok type of short content? I do follow a lot of wildlife photography TikTokers. I'm not sure what exactly you're asking, but if you want to know them, I can send them your way.
I can cover that too if you want, Jess.
Yes, go for it.
So this is going to be a little general, but I kind of tend to find that your average professional wildlife photographer is older. And I tend to see TikTok being a younger man's game. So I think that's probably why. But as Jessica said, there are some TikTok wildlife photographers out there, and there's actually there's a girl, I will recommend her. Her name is Savannah Rose, and she's really prevalent on TikTok, and I think she has over 500,000 followers at this point, and her TikTok stuff is really good. So it does exist, but I think it's just a matter of getting more and more younger people involved. And yeah, I think I mean, I'm not even on TikTok, so but I'm not that young. So I think it's just about getting the youngins involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also the same generation as Jennifer, and it's the generation that's just past TikTok. But it is a great way to put yourself out there. I honestly don't even know how to search who I follow, but I do follow some great ones. But Lynn, maybe I'll message you privately when I come across them. There are some really great ones. Jen, who I'm blanking on his name. Who is Isaac.
Isaac Spots.
So Isaac Takes Pics is his handle, and he is a very young gentleman, and he's very aware of his impact on the environment, which is really great. And he's definitely a great one to follow.
Yeah. Yeah, both Savannah and Isaac are out of Grand Teton National Park or Jackson Hole. I think more people are doing reels
Oh,
that are like Instagram reels that are similar to TikTok, but not, I don't know, not as TikTok-y.
I've seen a lot of Instagram reels.
not as TikTok-y.
I don't know. I've actually never been on TikTok. I don't know.
I feel like there's a lot of shark people on reels. Every time I'm going through reels, I see like a lot of sharks. It's like and maybe that's just me, but there's a lot of sharks on Instagram.
You're on the shark side of it. You watched one too many shark videos, and now
I watched one and it was like, hey, you like sharks.
You like
yeah.
sharks.
Yeah. Well,
Now
that's the problem with social media. If you watch one thing, it just assumes that you're into it.
I'm like, but you're the one who gave me the one thing. I didn't look for it. Like,
heaven forbid you set your phone down and you're watching a 14-year-old do something, because now you're on the 14-year-old side of TikTok and you're like, uh-oh, how do I get out of this?
Yeah.
I've done it. Takes a while. Anyways, all right, Jess, do you want to introduce our next speaker? Wow, look at that photograph.
I know, I meant to tell you, Cosmos, that's a very like classy photo you got there.
It comes with white background as well.
It's a really good photo. So Cosmos is the assistant director for ACK. After completing his bachelor's degree in India, he interned at Kenya Wildlife Service for several months before getting his first position as a research assistant with ACK in 2002. He later completed his master's degree in ecology and systematic zoology in Ethiopia. He's passionate about the value of indigenous knowledge and culture contributing to livelihoods and community resilience in the face of a changing climate and landscape. At the same time, he leads ACK in the use of scientific tools to inform decision-making to help communities cope with climate change while conserving the cheetah and other iconic wildlife in Kenya's fragile environment. Cosmos, tell us all of the things.
Great. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I wonder who took that picture. Well, good morning. It's morning here in Kenya and good evening in California. I hope everybody is having a great time. Thank you very much to the first two presenters. That was quite interesting and very, very different. So I'll just share, I have a few slides, not as pretty as our two presenters. Have I done that correctly? No, I don't think so. Let me come here and share screen. So yeah, I will, is it sharing?
It looks like it's starting to, yeah.
Okay. As an introduction, my name is Cosmas Wambua, and I'm the Assistant Director at Action for Cheetahs in Kenya. And so my principal job is to assist Mary Whitestra, the director, and I'm responsible for basically a lot of ACK programs, overseeing a lot of ACK programs, definitely with as part of a team. Sonora and your US team, you played a few videos, a few slides on ACK's mission and what we are all about. Just to recap, you know, as a conservation organization in Kenya, focusing on cheetahs, we are working in different areas. to ensure that cheetah populations in the country continue to thrive, and we don't lose them. So we have aspects of research, community engagements, education and outreach. Our canine detection aspect, and definitely, our main is research. So for research, ACK has been engaged in the scientific aspects of basically the program, which is collecting data on cheetah, collecting data on the animals that the cheetahs feed on, so the prey base, collecting data on their range, where they are found, and collecting data also on the connectivity of these ranges. So that's just one aspect of the research that we conduct. The other aspect is the actual sample collections, and this one we do through our canine team. Our canines are trained to discriminate cheetah scat from any other scat. And according to our latest data, our dogs are so well trained, they can do this 97% of the time. So no human effort can even compare to the abilities of our dogs. I will talk a little bit about what we are collecting with, why we are collecting the scats in the first place. I think somebody had asked a question to that effect, and I said I will tackle that in a bit. Sorry, excuse me. With the cheetah scat, you can learn quite a bit, quite a lot, without necessarily having to put a cheetah down, not down, but basically tranquilize a cheetah and get samples from it. So from the cheetah scat, you can look at genetics. You can look at how related these cheetahs are through genetics. Okay, and the relatedness can lead you to a wider aspect of breeding, which is, finding each other. So habitat fragmentation is an issue. So are these cheetahs finding each other to be able to breed? You can answer that question by going through the scat samples. The other aspect is diet. What are they feeding on? Are they feeding on more wildlife, or are they feeding on domestic animals, which is a predominant prey that they are taking? That can lead you, that can help you look at your herbivore data or any other general data that you've collected and say, okay, yeah, we have, let's say, dik-diks are our predominant herbivore species here, and the cheetahs are 70% feeding on dik-diks. So, things are good. The other thing is the health. Through hormone studies, you can figure out how well your cheetahs are doing health-wise. And then you can also look at diseases and parasites through the same scat. So you can get quite a lot of information just through the scat without ever interacting or stressing an actual cheetah through darting. And this is where the abilities of the dogs come in, because the dogs are their ability to discriminate sense is so high, and it's what they use to map out their environment. You can't compare them to anything else. You can send people out, but how often will they ever find a cheetah scat? So that's what our canine team is mostly focused on. Over time, ACK has been involved in other ways of collecting data, like radio telemetry, community interviews, education and outreach programs to share what we have learned and what we continuously learn. But how did I get here? So my journey to conservation began in my early years. I think maybe for most overseas people, it would be a little bit difficult to understand this concept. But we have the urban and rural settings. So sometimes we are brought up in both settings, where we go to school in urban areas, but during school holidays we have to spend time in the village, and that gave me an opportunity to explore both lifestyles. I was lucky to be able to interact with both domestic and wild animals when I was growing up, because during school holidays we would go to the village and I would go herding, at the same time learning my environment. And my love began with I know a lot of you are wondering why I have pigeons in my slide, but that's where I actually began actual interaction of being passionate with something. So I started keeping pigeons, which I did for quite a number of years, from maybe the age of 8 to around 12. And I have to ask Rachel, but they were ultimately, they became prey for some falcons. And I ended up losing virtually all of them. But that also ignited a spark in me about the interactions of the different species in our environment. After schooling, I had the opportunity to go to India. I had a full government scholarship, so I went to India to do my bachelor's degree in biology. And during that period, I managed to visit a few parks through school trips, seeing what kind of wildlife was there. And I got to learn that India at one particular time had as many cheetahs as Africa. But during the reign of the Mughals, they were all virtually wiped out from the wild, because they were taken in such large numbers for entertainment purposes, sparking another thing in my conscience about the human-wildlife interactions. So after schooling, I came back to Kenya, and the first thing I did was to volunteer with the Kenya Wildlife Service. Volunteering with the Kenya Wildlife Service offered me an ability to network and learn more, get a bit of experience from the organization. I was lucky that the person who took me under his wing was a very good guy who gave me quite a lot of opportunities. I did my first aerial elephant counts when I was a volunteer. I did elephant dung sampling. So I can say that I did not start with cheetah poop. I started with elephant poop. And then I met Mary it is 20 years ago this year. So it's been that long. And I fell in love with cheetahs. Mary was so passionate about her thematic area that it rubbed in me. But also I have a huge appreciation for culture and how different communities go around conservation issues. And this sparked my interest in the general ecology. And that's how I ended up doing my master's in ecological and systematic zoology, looking at the social aspects of conservation, economics, policy, everything that you can think about. So that's how I started my career in conservation. I have interests in both domestic and wildlife. So I can't say I'm very choosy. I love my animals. I do have my favorites, but I love my animals. And also something else that is quite high in my priorities are community livelihoods and the resilient mechanisms, because what affects people ultimately affects wildlife. If the people are struggling, they are less tolerant to wildlife losses. And as you can imagine, living in a landscape where you're sharing the land with wildlife, there is going to be conflicts. And so how people handle conflicts matters to us. Ecosystem and shared resources and land is a factor of production. And when I talk about land as a factor of production, I'm just talking about how different spheres of our society view land, where land is important to different communities in different ways, and so learning from them about what they think the land means to them is important, so that we can work together to try and protect, manage in a sustainable way the land, so that it can support both wildlife and the people who live in the same landscape. Conservation is not just a bed of roses, and I can say from my perspective, I think my joy is being able to earn a living doing something that I love. I'm always grateful every day when I'm going out to the field and enjoying the landscapes, enjoying the wildlife that is roaming free, and getting paid at the end. I take that as a blessing, and I do not take it for granted. But I also have my own fears, when I look at how things are going, that we are losing our living world quite fast. And sometimes I ask myself, you get to that point where you're wondering, are cheetahs going to be extinct in my own lifetime? And have I done enough to ensure that they don't? So you get this anxiety, fears whenever things are going wrong. And I can say that from the perspective of during the COVID, the height of the COVID issue, where funding almost dried up, and we were wondering whether we could be able to keep our staff employed. What would happen if things did not go well? Also, watching our critical habitats fragment, knowing that cheetahs require very large home ranges. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. The studies have been done, the results are out there. But we know that because of their genetic makeup, it's so difficult it's so easy for cheetahs to start showing inbreeding signs when the habitats become very fragmented. And then my disappointments when I find people who are in authority areas who think conservation issues are just theoretical. And these are people who will determine what policies get implemented in government. But yeah, just so that people know that it's not all happy. We have battles that we have to fight. We have fears and anxieties that we have to overcome. how you do it, how you cope with a group of friends, going out, hiking. It all depends on you. So my advice to anyone who wants to get into conservation, because conservation issues, I think they cut across, they may be a little different here and there, but they cut across virtually our entire global community, is to identify a thematic area that you're really passionate about. And as the previous two speakers have said, go for it. Find a way to pursue your passion, and volunteering with projects that share some of your ideals is a good starting point. So and also, because conservation is such an emotive topic, you learn to have respect for other people's view, even when you disagree with them. You will always find ways, and sometimes through constant engagements, you may bring them to your side to see your point of view. And definitely do not be afraid to express your ideas and thoughts, and share conservation messages whenever you can. So yeah, apart from, if I haven't gone over my time, I think I'm open now to the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You made me tear 4 times.
Oh.
Thank you, Cosmos.
Yes, what a great talk. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to either put them in the chat or unmute yourself. Shadrach said, Action for Cheetahs, wonderful work of using dogs to look for cheetah scat, as mentioned by Cosmos, and was featured in Wildlife Warriors show. So if you guys haven't seen it already, you can find it through our social media pages. We were featured, the scat detection dog team was featured on a Wildlife Warriors show, and it's amazing work that they do. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I think once we get the link, we'll put it on our social media platforms, and people can be able to watch. Yeah, so we were featured on national TV. Yay!
Yeah. You're a star. I should have gotten your autograph when I met you in November.
You probably will get another opportunity.
I'll print out the picture that is presented tonight, and you can sign that.
Thank you very much. Yes. So yeah, Jessica took that picture. Amazing.
Shout out to the iPhone 13.
Cool.
All right. Question from Shadrach. I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm sorry if I am not. I have a question for Cosmos. Kindly unmute me. Oh, I think you can unmute yourself. I will try to unmute you. Hold on. I am not the host. I don't think I can unmute you, but can you try to unmute yourself? I think everybody has the ability to.
From my end, it looks like all I can do is ask people to unmute themselves.
Okay. If you go down to the bottom of your screen all the way to the left, there should be like a little microphone, and you can mute and unmute yourself.
Before he can do that, I see Desiree has a question about whether we do any virtual education programs about what we do geared towards kids. We haven't gotten to that place yet, but we are working towards different platforms that we can be able to share with kids of different ages. However, we do have physical education programs where we talk to youths, we talk to women, and we also talk to young Morans who do not have the ability, who are not in formal schooling. So we find time when they can be able to interact, and we do some education programs, basically with a cheetah as a focal point, but where they also learn other aspects of conservation and ecosystem, how everything works together. One thing I forgot to also mention was our work with our rabies campaign work. We have a campaign every year where we do vaccinations, community vaccinations for community member dogs for rabies and distemper, because these two diseases are cross species, and we find that the rabies and distemper is also affecting wild cheetah and wild dog populations. So we do have campaigns towards the elimination and eradication of rabies. So that's an aspect of some of the things that we do that I did not mention. Shadrach, can I? Yeah, it's unfortunate, but can I give him my contact and he can just call me?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what's going on on your end, unfortunately.
Let me see if he can call and ask.
Phone a friend.
Yeah, and ask the question on a regular call, and I can answer it on the platform.
Do you guys train your own dogs, or do you have them put through a program and then come back to you?
No, we are training our own dogs. Currently, we have 2 dogs. Unfortunately, we lost one of our dogs in January to tick bite fever. We struggled a lot to try and keep her alive, but in the end, it wasn't possible. So we are remaining with 2 working dogs, and we train them ourselves. We have a set of volunteer trainers lined up, and I think our team will greatly benefit from their experience. Yes, so
How long does it typically take you guys to go from start to finish for training that detection work?
for the dogs that we've had, because we've had them from when they were puppies, I think by the time they were around 15 months old, they were ready to go to the field. So it is intensive, but once they are trained, from what I understand, is that it's easier to retrain them on a different scent. So once they learn the general work, you can be able to retrain them, like you can be able to retrain them to find, let's say, lion, scat.
Right.
Yes.
There's a couple of programs here in the US that is doing that with all kinds of stuff. They're finding Mexican spotted owls, they're finding black-footed ferret burrows and invasive plants. And I think that's really awesome because dogs are way more efficient than people.
Yes. Yes, that's very, 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 very true. We've we found out that dogs are quite amazing. Let me see if Shadrach has sent a message on and my share screen. Okay, how do I stop? Oh, stop share. There you are. Okay. So Desiree, I hope I answered both your questions.
Yes,
Mary,
you did. Thank you.
if I've missed anything,
You got it. Thank you.
great. Good. Lin Fan, you look like you want to ask me something.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, during the past 2 years, what are the most difficult things that you have overcome?
I think I would say first of all, we've overcome COVID and all the restrictions that made it virtually impossible to work, especially when we had the lockdowns. That was a very, very stressful time for most of our staff. It's okay. Communal living is okay up to a certain point, and then people start getting edgy and short on each other. So dealing with the with the emotional repercussions of COVID. But I am really glad that we came out much stronger as a team, and thank you to people like Ling Fang and Jessica who continue to assist in different ways during this time. And also, it gave us an opportunity to learn new ways of doing things. Now, nobody misses meetings, regardless of where they are, because there's Zoom and stuff like that. But also, it did pull back our work in the communities that we work in. Our conflict mitigation toolbox training and follow-up is almost 2 years behind, and getting donors to understand that it's a fault not of our own is an uphill task. Why you did not spend their money when you are supposed to, and why you are asking for an extension. But the conditions on the ground made it impossible for us to do some of the things that we had intended to do and that we had told our donors we would do.
Cosmas, I have a question. What's the ratio of the amount of time you spend out in the field versus the community work versus, I don't know, computer work and when you're back home? What's your day, week, month look like?
Let's just go by month.
Okay.
Okay, I can do a day. So as the assistant director, and having younger researchers coming in, I'm stepping more and more away from the actual field work. But I do enjoy being out in the field. So I will spend as much as 3 weeks in a month out in Samburu. But during that time, I can assist whenever they want, if they want me to attend a meeting, so that I can speak on behalf of the organization when they have fears that they are not, maybe they do not have the authority to say certain things. I will attend stuff like that. I will engage with our partners in the field, the board members, the management of the conservancy directly. Do attend meetings for the different aspects of ACK. We have meetings canine meetings on Tuesday. We have my almost daily meetings with Mary. We have set meetings for nationwide survey and outreach and education. So we've broken down our days, and I also have a day that I do my office work and accounting. So I would say maybe I spent around 15% of the entire month, maybe on me.
Awesome.
When I
Thank you.
get, when I get some time off, I go home. I have a few cows. I have a few goats. So
No
I go.
pigeons?
I
No
go.
pigeons?
No pigeons. I still have to find a way of protecting them. But the only way I can protect them from these kites is
Oh,
to
yeah.
is have them completely secured, and I don't think that's a fair life for them.
Were
Right.
you using homing pigeons or racing pigeons?
Just the regular ones. I'm not quite
Those regular
sure.
pigeons.
Yeah, just the regular pigeons, like the ones that are a pest in New York.
Yeah.
Those ones.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I at that time I even used to specifically breed them for various characteristics. Like I would get two white, a male and a female, to see if I'm going to get white babies and the brown ones.
Mhm.
But yeah, as a kid, I was really passionate about them. And when schools reopened, it became my mother's responsibility to ensure she takes care of them. So they would follow her sometimes even to the market. And
Cute.
everybody knew in my village. Everybody knew they were my pigeons. So people, yeah.
They're really popular to keep in the Middle East as well. Like when I was out there, everybody had pigeons and bred them, and for all the different like fancy varieties, like the ones with feathers on their heads that look like hats or feathers on their feet. And
Yeah.
like it's like a big deal in some places.
Yeah, and they rest them.
And they show them.
Compete
Yeah.
them. They have shows. No, for me it was just something I really liked their cooing noises. But yeah, my mother was pretty upset because then we lost the ability to tap the roof water, because they would go to the roof and poop on the roof. So when it rained and there was nobody there to remove the wash off, the high nitrogen, the poop would go into the water tank, and the water would be would be unusable.
That you were in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, so she was always pulling her hair. She's like, "Oh, these pigeons."
Thank you, Cosmos.
Thank you very much, and nice to meet Jess. Has the baby gone to bed?
Yes, he's in my lap, but he is passed out.
Cool.
We have a question from Shadrach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lawyer who would wish to transition to wildlife conservation and use my legal knowledge and other transferable skills to aid in conservation. How best should I make this transition, and where can I get hands-on practical skills in conservation? I've loved animals since I was young and am a volunteer for the member of Kenya Society for the Protection of Animals. That's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Think you could meet up with Cosmos and Mary and yeah.
Join our team.
My goodness, yeah, that's a big jump, but definitely from where I stand, Shadrach, there's opportunities in I don't know what they're calling it now, but lawyers who are specifically working on conservation issues from a legal perspective. I
Here
guess
they're
most
called environmental lawyers.
environmental lawyers, yeah, so to speak. So I'm not quite sure, what aspects, which part of law that you're interested in. I wouldn't even know where to begin to direct you, where you can get your hands dirty, except from, I can definitely put you in touch with people who I know have taken the government to court for various environmental issues, and maybe that can actually having a talk with that can help you figure out where you can start. But definitely, yes, legal aid is a big thing now in environmental issues. Because when we look at our constitution is so clear on what we as a present generation needs to do to preserve the ability of future generations to enjoy the same or better environmental services than we are. And when government agencies transgress that, then only lawyers can help to fight for aspects that cannot fight for themselves. But yeah, you can give me a call anytime. You have my number. You can give me a call and we can talk.
Awesome, thank you. We'll go ahead and go through our slides and give you guys one more opportunity to take a photo of that Venmo QR code and see exactly where your dollars can help. And as Cosmos mentioned, the past 2 years, like, it has affected everybody in the world. COVID has affected our support and our means as well. So anything that you can donate does go a long way. Don't feel obligated. Also, support is educating other people about the work that we do. So even just following us on social media, maybe sharing our account and our page with your friends and family, all those things do support us. We still have our calendar. I know it's into March now, but definitely still can use a new calendar for 2022. All cheetahs, wonderful photos based out of Kenya. And that's at a discounted rate. There are so many really cool figurines on top of these standing animals. There's ornaments and things that make really, really good gifts. Again, I have almost every jewelry item, and knowing that it's like a local artisan that's making it, it makes it extremely special. Some of them also, again, are from recycled items. So that's also really cool when you wear a piece that used to be a pot or an electrical wire. It's very interesting to wear it. The cheetah soccer ball, they come in a couple different sizes. So if you have a little kid with little tiny feet, you can kind of see there's a little part of the picture to the left of it. So it does come in a couple different sizes. They're really, really cool. And then the virtual dog adoptions as well. As Cosmos mentioned, we did lose a really special dog recently, but that support can go a long way with the work that they're doing with the scat dogs. So there's a QR code if you want to go to our Shopify account. There, and then there's our website again. So feel free to browse it, get to know us a little bit more and the work that we do. And if you need to contact us at any time. Our next event coming up is our silent auction. We have a lot of really cool items from artwork, photographs, to the cool crafts. So we have baskets that have multiple items from our cool craft collection in there, as well as some ACK shirts and things like that. The beaded collars that Jess mentioned earlier, I know that was a big hit at our last auction. So keep an eye out on our social media pages for links to that. But it will run for a week through April 23rd through 30th. So you will have a week to kind of bid on items. And yeah, that's, you know, it's a win-win, right? You get something really cool and you're supporting a really amazing project. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or just want to open it up and chat and hang out for a little bit, feel free. If not, thank you guys so much for coming and supporting us. And in another 2 to 3 months, we'll have another one with 3 amazing other speakers. So look forward, follow us and look forward to that. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Rachel and Jennifer, great work you guys are doing. Amazing
Thank you.
photographs. Yeah,
Thank you.
You as well.
thank you for
Great
being a
work.
part.
Thank you all very much.
Jess, Sonora,